My name is Emma Bergman, and I am an artist, and I work in video installation and performance and archives. I've got two different things going on right now. One is this sort of ongoing collaboration with my friend James Jones, who's incarcerated in Illinois, and we're working on a project about food and sort of about our relationship and the ways that the state sort of intervenes in that friendship. And then the other project is over here, sort of spread, and that's about alternative family structures, essentially. Basically, I've been interviewing a bunch of people who are in different family structures, people who are in communes, people who live with exes in some sort of extravagant co-parenting situation, people who share finances across larger than groups of two. And I think in working on the project with my friend James, I was thinking a lot about how that relationship doesn't fit into a lot of the sort of conventional understandings of relationships. So right now I'm doing these interviews, but I'm also planning a little dinner and workshop where I'm gonna sort of pitch a commune to my loved ones. And then have a little confessional booth for people to reflect on what they honestly think about that. It really helps me to especially when I'm dealing with these abstract concepts, to have sort of visual representations of the research. So this is just a tracking of the different interviews that I've done with people who are in different kinds of living situations. And then these are some quotes that I've pulled out of those interviews that are sort of thematically grouped, and I'm continuing to build on that. And all of that will sort of go into the pitch section of this workshop that I'm planning. Down here I have a bunch of stuff about questions that have been driving my inquiry and questions that have come up in these different conversations. Something I really like about interviewing people, which has been a part of my practice forever, is that there's so many things that I would never think of alone that I'm introduced to through relationships with other people. And so a lot of my work is collaborative, but right now I'm working in a more solo way, but then having these conversations allows me to use those same skills and those same values. My plan is to have this workshop to edit together some sort of short documentation of it, and then to have that playing on a loop with ways that people can interact with it. That's a big part of my work, is trying to have an open conversation with people who are engaging with the work. And these are just my friends. I can also imagine this becoming a workshop series where sometimes just a group of people who I don't know and who maybe I wouldn't want to do this kind of thing with. There's all sorts of experimentation that can happen. And so I really want to have this be step one, and I can see a bunch of different outputs after that. So this is something that I was working on before that I'm sort of returning to now, actually. Basically, this is a video collage that goes with the conversation that is playing, where we're sort of talking about a difficult conversation we had in our relationship, and we sort of weave in and out of talking about that and also talking about the food that we've eaten together, which, because he's incarcerated, is only vending machine food that's in the visitation room. You can't see any of the video, but you can print photos. There's a service that you can upload photos and have them sent. So I've taken some photo documentation of it and sent it to him. And when I sent him a photo of the arms that come up on this table, I had a friend of mine took a picture of me on one side and then my arms on the other side. And he was so struck because he was like, I wrote a story that goes perfectly with this. But then from there, I was like, what if you draw your arms so that I can put your arms on the other side of the table? And so that's when he sent me these, which I think are so beautiful. When we first met, some friends and I were curating a show in New York it was called Visitation, and it was essentially an abolitionist show of people who were in prison or people who were system impacted or recently released. So after that, Rocco and I started working on a short film together that was about care networks in prison, essentially, and not provided by the prison, but care networks that people who are incarcerated form with each other in order to survive. He felt like a really natural collaborator to me. And so, yeah, we had all of these conversations about food. We had joked a lot about food. It was like a way that we connected. And so it seemed like a natural continuation of that conversation. This one I do have more of an end in mind for. I envision this as a sort of short 10-ish minutes video loop installation like this. But I think some of these images aren't finalized. This was really just collage mode, thinking about some of the things that were coming up in the conversation, and also just wanting to experiment visually with things that I was really liking looking at, and liking things that I found sort of meditative while listening, because so much of our relationship isn't visual. I really like it to be installed with chairs so that people can sit. And I built underneath here, I built a shelf that can hold all the tech for it, including headphones. So I'd like it to be that when you're not sitting at the table, you can't hear the conversation, and then you can come up and put the headphones on. I think there's something interesting about sitting across from someone and eavesdropping, because the conversation is vague, but I think it's emotionally specific, but vague in terms of the actual facts of what we're talking about. That's the other thing about this relationship, is it exists in short, intense spurts. Like when I go to visit him, I sit there for 4 hours and we talk, and then I leave. Then I sleep in some hotel, and then I sit with him for another 4 hours the next day. It's not designed for human interaction, which is, I think, conveyed in this a little bit. The art that I want to make is nuanced, and it isn't always clear. And so if I'm engaging in this sort of workshop experiment, then I want the product of that to pose questions and to make people think and to be interesting and in some way interactive. But I don't need it to be I don't need to have figured it out to want to present it. And this too, this is a conversation between us where we're trying to figure it out and essentially not figuring it out. There's a whole section of this conversation where we're just talking about how words are failing us, how all of the words we use to try to describe what happened between us feel like cheap versions of the actual thing. Or for me, words are a big part of my work. I want words to do so much. The medium is almost never sufficient. And so the relationship adds a depth to that.